The doctor is in on KPEL. Get well, Acadiana, with Dr. Kevin.
Welcome back to Get Well, Acadiana with Dr. Kevin. I am Dr. Kevin Lenderman. I'm here with my co-host, Brandon Como. Brandon, how's it going today?
Doing well. Excited for the next show.
Man, we got a great response from our first show last week, and you said you had a lot of people talking about it, and it was a great response. That's fantastic.
Yes, most definitely.
I'm going to call it a huge success. It's my show, so I can do that. I choose to call it a huge success, and I'm still getting used to this format. When I was on CJ and Deb, I had to talk so fast, and I always had so much more material than I had time for. And I always had points that I was trying to teach the audience and never had time to make them all. And, on this show, I can slow down and expand on my points a little bit and explain topics more. And I have a real fast-speaking cadence anyway, so that's a little bit of an adjustment for me. But anyway, thank you all for listening. I'm Dr. Kevin Lenderman. I'm the Senior Vice President for the Bryant Wellness Institutes. We're now Acadiana's most successful functional medicine and wellness institutes, and functional medicine is really the future of healthcare. So we're on the cutting edge of treatments. I'm a wellness practitioner, a nationally certified weight loss coach, a chiropractic physician, a functional medicine specialist, and a certified dry needling practitioner, in addition to being the dad of a 6-year-old. So I stay very busy around the house and around the office. And, I've been fortunate enough to be rated in the top 10% of wellness practitioners in the country. And the reason that I do all of this, in addition to running a very busy practice, is I'm driven by an unshakable purpose to help as many people as possible live a better life using totally natural, drug-free solutions. And that's what this show is all about. So I've literally now been on a 20-year quest to solve complicated health problems using totally natural means. And we've been very successful at that and getting more successful all the time. Brandon, we're really starting to figure this thing out in the field of wellness and functional medicine. We're starting to get this down, and really some amazing advancements. And I can't wait to bring them to you guys on the show every single week. So I'm very, very excited about it.
Well, I'll be honest with you. Like I told you last week, I'm excited to be able to learn more and to be able to listen to all of the research that y'all have been doing and the results that y'all have been getting in as well. So that's one of the joys that I have in getting to sit here with you, is just getting to learn from you and getting to learn about what's going to help make my body more healthier and better.
Yeah, and the families as well. And so you guys can email me your health questions at drkevin@bryantwellnessinstitutes.com, and we'll discuss them on the show. And it's Dr. Kevin, Dr. Kevin at Bryant, Bryant, wellnessinstitutes with an S.com. And so Dr. Kevin at bryantwellnessinstitutes.com, and we'll discuss them on the show. And I did get one email from last week, and before we get started on my topic today, I wanted to just get out of the way. And Jill from Youngsville writes, Dr. Kevin, how do I know if my symptoms are something I should get looked at or just normal? Well, Jill, thanks for listening, and thank you for your question. And the truth is, Jill, symptoms are a sign that damage is being done to your tissue, period. And symptoms are a sign that a malfunction is occurring somewhere in your body. So the truth is, there are no symptoms that are normal. There is no such thing as normal headaches, normal joint pain, normal chest pain. No such thing as normal symptoms. Just like it wouldn't be normal for your check engine light to come on your car. Even if it happened once a week, that would still be a sign that something was wrong. Your body sends you signals that something is wrong, and we should always listen to them. We should be concerned and get them checked by some sort of a screening process whenever you have symptoms in your body. And so, without knowing specifically what's happening with you, getting those things checked out by one of what we call our wellness screenings is a really, really good thing to do. And so there are no such thing as normal symptoms. And listen, patients tell me that all the time. I'll say, tell me what's going on with you, and they'll list what they think is going wrong, and I'll say anything else like headaches, and they'll say, well, I just get the normal amount of headaches. And that is not normal. It's not normal to have symptoms going on in your body. So, Jill, thanks for listening. But, yes, that is not normal, whatever symptoms you're having, and we may want to look at them to see what's going on with you, for sure. And so you can email me your health questions, and we're going to discuss them on the show. And that's Dr. Kevin at bryantwellnessinstitutes.com. That's institutes with an S. And for those that missed last week's show, you can go on KPEL's website, and in the search bar, you can search Get Well Acadiana, and it'll pull up the shows, and you can listen to them if you missed the show on Saturday mornings. Now, at the Bryant Wellness Institutes, we have technology and treatment options that Acadiana really needs to know about. We're doing some truly amazing things at the Bryant Wellness Institutes. We have some new technologies that you've probably never heard of. We have some new treatment options that are, able to solve problems that basically we would have just had to turn away before. And so we have locations in Lafayette, Broussard, and New Iberia, but we pride ourselves on solving patients' problems for good. And our promise to you is to always, always listen to you with concern and treat you with compassion. And that's something, in our opinion, at Bryant Wellness that we could use a lot more of in the healthcare industry. People want to just be listened to with concern and treated with compassion. And our promise is to always do that for you. Now, functional medicine is the future of healthcare, and we're tremendously successful with our new functional medicine program at Bryant Wellness Institutes. And like I said, guys, we're really starting to figure this thing out. We're starting to know how to affect the cells at their most basic level and change their function using natural solutions. And we're making strides with new treatments and research in the field of wellness and functional medicine that we're able to solve problems that people don't even think that there's solutions to, or that they don't realize that they don't have to rely on traditional health care in order to solve their problems anymore. And, we pride on our reputation on permanent solutions to today's most complicated health challenges, and not just managing the decline or not monitoring your disease and not patching problems up so that you just don't feel them anymore, but actually solving patients' problems. And the reason that this is so important is because America now takes 50% of all the pharmaceutical drugs on planet Earth, yet we are only 4% of the world's population. We spend more on health care than most of the developed world combined, and we have more hospitals and doctors than almost any other country in the world, yet China and Cambodia have a longer life expectancy than we do in the United States of America. That's crazy. They have dirt floors in Cambodia, and sometimes their villages are miles from any hospital or any doctor's office, and sometimes their water's not the cleanest, and guess what? They outlive us in the United States of America, and to me, I find that astonishing. So if the answer to great health were doctors, drugs, hospitals, and money, wouldn't we be like the healthiest country in the world? Yet we're far from it. We're very far from it. So I have an amazing show today. Today, the show is we're going to discuss all about the different aspects of diabetes, what it is, what we can do about it. This whole show is going to be about natural solutions to diabetes. And I'm going to be hosting a free community workshop on diabetes next Thursday night at the Hilton Garden Inn. I'm going to be inviting you later on in the show to that. It's going to be called The 4 Secrets to Resolving Diabetes. It's going to be open to the public. So later in the show, I'm going to be telling you how to call and register for that. So get your pen ready. But we'll be discussing that a little bit later in the show. But natural solutions for diabetes, we're going to cover things that you may have never heard before, but you're going to find this very, very interesting. So now, if you're listening and you know someone that has diabetes, call or text them right now and tell them to tune in. If you know someone with diabetes, they're going to want to know this information. It could actually change their life. Well, it could save their life, actually. So if you're listening and you don't have diabetes, you still need this information, because so many people have pre-diabetes and don't even know it yet. In fact, 1/3 of Americans now have pre-diabetes, meaning if they don't do something to turn things around, they're going to have full-blown diabetes very, very, very soon. Diabetes is rampant in America. And diabetes is so common in Louisiana now that it's almost seen as normal. And we're now the most obese state in the country. And Louisiana has a real problem with obesity, more than any other state in America. Brendan, weren't you just saying that Lafayette's
Lafayette being the 8th fattest city in the United States.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing. And so you can see why diabetes is a real problem with us. And guys, this is something, Most people feel, well, I just take my medicine and my numbers are okay, so everything's good. You're going to see today that that's not good enough. Diabetes affects the small vessels of the eye, causing blindness. It affects the lower limbs, the legs and the feet, leading to amputation of the legs. It affects the kidneys, leading to kidney failure and dialysis machines. And it really damages the body. It's not something that you should take lightly. Now, as you're going to see today, we're not even looking at the right parameters when it comes to diabetes. We're not even focusing on the right numbers. And we're going to get into that on today's show. We're focusing on blood sugar. And diabetes is a problem with insulin, not blood sugar. So if you think you're okay because your metformin is managing to keep your blood sugar numbers in a box they call normal, then you're in real trouble. And this is critical that we look into this because the rates of diabetes and prediabetes have doubled in the last decade. And if this growth rate continues, the rates of amputations and blindness and kidney dialysis machines in the future is going to overwhelm our healthcare system. So we have to get a handle on this. The rates of diabetes among young people, among teens, and among children has risen at such an alarming rate that it's a huge problem for America. In fact, type 2 diabetes used to be called adult onset diabetes 40 or 50 years ago because that's the only people that got it. But now kids are getting it so common that they had to change the name to type 2 diabetes. And this is really a tragedy. Young people have diabetes at a rate never before seen in the history of mankind. But Brandon, I see these kids in Walmart in a stroller that can't even walk yet, and they're drinking juice and gumming. They don't even have teeth yet. They're gumming a Tootsie Roll and drinking juice. And, kids have Pop-Tarts for breakfast and sodas all days and cookies and sweets at every turn. It's no wonder that so many kids are developing diabetes now.
And I wanted to ask you that, Doc. How much does genetics and lifestyle play into someone getting diabetes? I mean, what's kind of that balance that you find as diabetes is becoming more and more just commonplace now?
Yeah, that's a great question. And a lot of times patients will come in and they'll say, well, my mom had diabetes and I have diabetes. But you know what? You were also raised the same. You ate the same foods. You drank the same drinks as well. And so I find that genetics aren't as big of a role as what we blame for it sometimes.
Yeah.
They'll say, well, I know obesity runs in my family. Like my whole family's overweight. Yeah, but they also ate all the same foods and got the same activities and, shop the same. And all of that plays a factor as well.
It's a convenient excuse to just blame it on genetics.
It is. And, genetics is, I'm a believer that it's mostly what we do to ourselves. It's mostly environmental. I mean, think about this. The average American now eats 180 pounds of sugar every year. I mean, that adds up to an industrial dumpster full in your lifetime. I'm not talking about the green dumpster behind your office. I'm talking about the roll-off dumpsters you see at construction sites, that they bring with a semi-truck and they roll it off, those huge dumpsters. That's how much sugar we eat in our lifetime. Could you imagine, taking that dumpster full of sugar and parking it in your backyard and having to eat that thing in your lifetime? I mean, it's crazy.
When I saw someone actually was talking the other day that made the correlation saying that sugar to children is like, alcohol to adults that abuse it.
Yes. Yeah, it's addictive.
Yeah.
Sugar is one of the most addictive things that ever to come out. And the sad part about it, if you really study this, and I have literally a file cabinet on how much sugar and the way that the typical food industry in America manipulates people, they know it. They know that sugar is very addictive, and they give it to our children at an alarming rate.
Yeah.
So they don't care about making you obese. They care about selling more Pop-Tarts. And so you can see by the coloring and the commercials that are produced and all that. So we went through this low-fat craze in the 90s, and all the food was low-fat. You remember the little green Snackwell cookies like back in the 90s? And they said low-fat or fat-free on the front of the box. So they thought they were great to buy. And it had like 40 or 50 grams of sugar in it.
Yeah.
And so low-fat, high sugar is not the diet that's going to help you. And the truth is that fat does not make us fat. Sugar makes us fat. Now, when you add that, when you add 180 pounds of sugar to the teenagers that have all the chemicals and caffeine that they pack in their energy drinks and the fast food that's in all the processed foods that they eat, it's literally void of any nutrition whatsoever. That is such a recipe for disaster and major diseases later on in life. You know, it's literally zero nutritional value. So the thing about it is we're overeating and starving our bodies all at the same time. We're overeating and starving our body of nutrients all at the same time. And I said that twice because I want you to kind of understand what I mean by that. We're literally eating too much food and our bodies are starving for nutrients. And so I look at the food journals. Brenda, one of the things I do when I have some of the kids that I have that come in, you know, we may have a kid come in for behavior or attention or concentration problems or, you know, all the different things that we treat kids for, you know, at our office. And I'll have them do a 10-day food journal. And it's striking whenever I see what they've eaten over 10 days' time. Many times in 10 days, the child has eaten almost zero nutritional value food. Like there's less than one meal actually nutritional value in 10 days of food. You know, you add up, it's just dead food. You know, you add up the Pop-Tarts for breakfast, the pizzas, the chips and the sodas, and there's just no nutritional value at all in their food that they get over 10 days. So we're overeating and starving our bodies at the same time, and that's such a shame. And so if you eat too often and your body overproduces insulin for an extended period of time, the cells will begin to send out signals to the body to eat more sugar. So what happens? You begin to get sugar cravings. So that compounds the problem. So you start to eat even more sugar. And then that extra glucose spills over and begins to spill over into the kidneys. And so then your urine begins to pick this up on urinalysis, and the body begins to urinate more frequently. This causes the blood to get thick, and the patient gets thirsty often and wakes up needing water and wakes up being very thirsty. And as the blood gets too thick, poor circulation begins to occur. So the extremities get wounds that can't heal and feet that stay cold. And then you begin to get the diabetic neuropathy, which is tingling and numbness in the legs. The tiny arteries of the eyes become affected, so the vision begins to fail. And since the cells are still not getting the glucose they need, the patient gets tired often. As this progresses, more and more insulin must become injected, and the cells get less and less able to use their insulin. The cells get more and more deprived of glucose they need to function normally. The limbs become really compromised, so they need to be amputated to prevent gangrene. The sugar cravings get worse and worse, and by this time, blindness and vision loss becomes prevalent. As the process continues, the insulin becomes no longer able to keep up. Usually the patient then dies from a complication of these factors. So this is the progression of someone that develops diabetes. The infection in the lower limbs, pneumonia, and some other comorbid disease processes begin to happen. And so my numbers, they'll say, my numbers are okay, my medicine is working. That is not okay. So 35% of the population in America has prediabetes, meaning if they don't reverse the direction they're headed, they will have full-blown diabetes soon. 50% of Americans over 65 now have prediabetes. 70% of the people with prediabetes develop diabetic neuropathy, which is tingling in the feet, and 60% of the limb amputations are from diabetes. Diabetes is now the leading cause of kidney failure and the leading cause of blindness. And so here's what's scary about all this. People think that if they're managing their blood sugar with their medication, then everything is fine. And as you're going to see today, that is not fine. That is, in fact, a ticking time bomb waiting for way worse things to happen down the road. People think, well, my numbers are good, my metformin's working, so I'm healthy. This is a very dangerous way of thinking. And we're going to dive into this all on today's show. So thank you for listening and stay tuned. Now, you're listening to Get Well Acadiana with Dr. Kevin. I'm going to be hosting a free community workshop called 4 Secrets to Solving Diabetes. We're going to be offering simple solutions to solving your diabetes for good, not just managing your disease, not just keeping your numbers in a box, That's the wrong data. You're not focusing on the right numbers. So you can call to register your seat now by calling my office at 837-7174 and leaving your name and number. The workshop will be next Thursday night at 7 p.m. at the Hilton Garden Inn. It's free to the public. Each participant is going to be given a $200 certificate, a gift from me worth $200 for a diabetes wellness screening with me personally in my office. So call 837-7174 right now and leave your name and number to register for our 4 Secrets to Solving Diabetes workshop. Stay tuned right after this. Go text someone with diabetes and tell them to tune in. I'm Dr. Kevin. This is Get Well Acadiana.
Contact Bryant Wellness Institute at 837-7174.
Welcome back to Get Well Acadiana. I'm Dr. Kevin. It's Brandon Como. And so the next thing I wanted to discuss is, what is insulin? Like, what does that even mean? Insulin's job in your body is to put the sugar inside the cell for use. Now, cells are designed to perform functions. A brain cell thinks, a muscle cell contracts, a stomach cell makes acid, a saliva cell makes saliva, and so on. Now, our cells run off of glucose, kind of like your car runs off of gasoline. It is the cellular's energy. It's what your cells use to produce energy. Now, the tiny cellular functions run off of glucose, and glucose must be able to pass through the cell wall for use. But our cell walls are closed off to keep out viruses and toxins and all the bad stuff. Insulin is the key that opens the cell wall and passes the glucose in the cell for use. So it's like there's a trap door in the cell wall, and insulin is the key. It unlocks the door, passes the glucose in the cell for use, and then locks it back. Now, in type 1 diabetes, that's when the pancreas cells have been killed by the body's own immune system. So that's an autoimmune. So type 1 diabetes, there's not enough insulin because the body's own immune system has decided that it's going to attack and kill the body's own cells that produce insulin. So that's an autoimmune disease. And autoimmune diseases are growing at an alarming rate, and autoimmune diseases are by far one of the biggest concerns of modern medicine, and they're getting more and more dangerous, and that's a topic for a different show. But the truth is, our bodies are attacking itself at an alarming rate. Today, we're mainly discussing type 2 diabetes. With type 1, there's not enough insulin because the body's killed the cells that make it. But with type 2, there's enough insulin, but the cells have become resistant to it. It's like the key no longer opens the lock. It's like the locks have been changed. There's plenty of insulin. In fact, there's too much insulin, but the cells are just not using it. So the key here is to ask why the cells are not utilizing their insulin. Traditional medicine says, well, the cells have become resistant, and that's that, and I'm going to prescribe metformin. The problem with that is that metformin whips the pancreas to just make more insulin. So it's like if you have so much insulin produced in your body that it just kicks the door open. It's like the heck with the key. I'm just going to kick the door open and put the sugar inside the cell. Let's just rip the door off the hinges and put the sugar in. But the problem with that is that too much insulin is toxic to the human body. But guess what? They don't even test for insulin on regular blood work. Can you imagine, as important as insulin is in the management of diabetes, they don't even regularly test for that on blood work? Diabetes is a disease of insulin, but they look at blood sugar, not insulin levels. And so we're looking at all the wrong stuff. And so we have to begin at least looking at all the right numbers and figuring out how we can get the cells to start to function and do what we want the cells to do. And so I'm hosting a free community workshop on natural solutions to diabetes. It's called 4 Secrets to Solving Diabetes. It's going to be next Thursday night at 7 at the Hilton Garden Inn. You can call my office at 837-7174 and leave your name and number, and we'll call you back on Monday to discuss that a little further. It's 837-7174 to leave your name and number, and you will be reserved a spot. But seating is limited. So you are going to want to call right away. But the workshop is probably the most valuable 1 hour that you've ever spent whenever it comes to your health. Each participant will be given a $200 certificate for a diabetes wellness screening with me personally, one-on-one, to see if we can help. Now, one of the things, Brandon, that always amazes me is when somebody has a disease and they haven't even really looked it up. They don't even really know what they have.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in other words, if a doctor told me I had a disease and I didn't know about it, I would absolutely want to know every detail of it. Guys, listen, I'm telling you, we need to take action to figure out what's going on and what we need to do inside our bodies. You know, the days of just sort of relying on traditional healthcare to bail us out, those days are over. If you find out that you have something, you really need to take a look and see what it is. But just looking at your blood sugar level and your A1C level is not a complete picture of what your body is doing. Diabetes is a problem with insulin, not a problem with blood sugar. And so there's another hormone I wanted to introduce you to that controls insulin called leptin. Leptin is the hormone that tells insulin when to produce and what to do. So leptin is insulin's boss, and we don't check for that either. And if your leptin is off for some reason, that could be telling your insulin to be off, and that could be what's throwing your cells into becoming resistant. So all of this needs to be looked at, as well as dietary factors is another way that we can control leptin. And so this is complicated, and there's a lot to it. But the problem is patients go, well, I'll say, what do you know about your diabetes? And I'll say, well, my doctor said my numbers were off, so he gave me this medicine, and then he said my numbers were good, so I'm healthy. It's so much more complicated than that. That is going to lead to some of these worst issues down the road. And remember what I said, diabetes is the number one cause of kidney dialysis and 60% of leg amputations and the number one cause of blindness. And so you want to do more than just say, well, I'm managing my numbers so everything is okay. We really have to start to take action to see if there's something else we can do to try to stay healthier and to try to get things solved once and for all. And so you're listening to Get Well Acadiana. This is Dr. Kevin. Stay tuned. I'm going to blow your mind with some fascinating facts right after the break.
Like Dr. Kevin on Facebook by searching Bryant Wellness Institute's Get Well Acadiana with Dr. Kevin on News Talk 96.5, KPEL.
Welcome back to Get Well Acadiana. I'm Dr. Kevin. We're discussing diabetes today. And before the break, we were discussing that we're actually tracking all the wrong data. And at least we're not tracking everything that we should be. Just looking at your blood sugar levels and your A1C is not the complete picture of what your body is doing. Diabetes is an insulin problem. So why don't we test for insulin levels when we do blood work? And I want to introduce you to another hormone called leptin. You know, like I said, leptin is insulin's boss, and wouldn't we want to know what leptin is doing as well? So our blood panel, when we do our diabetes test, our blood panel is about 15 different pages of things. We have to look at all of these different factors so that we can get a complete picture whenever it comes to what's happening inside the body. And remember, what do we want to know? Why the cells are doing what they're doing, and how can we get the cells to behave differently. Now, at my workshop next Thursday night, we'll also be showing you some really neat dietary factors as one of the number one ways to control leptin production. And in fact, we have something that we're going to give you called the leptin diet, and that's all how we control the production of leptin using dietary changes. And many times when we say diet, people sort of run for the door. And dieting is, when I say that, I mean, it's all about how many times you eat a day, what you should be eating at every meal. And the biggest thing that whenever we talk about dietary changes is that what includes each one of those meals. And what you're going to see whenever it comes to dietary changes is our diets are not where you have to eat like a rabbit. Our dietary changes are done where it's fun and it's tasty. Our diets are loaded with healthy fats, which are very filling and satisfying, loaded with full flavor foods where you can You can stay full for a long time. And with our diet, you should never be hungry. In fact, we have you eat 6 times a day. Foods that are full of flavor and taste and actually are very, very delicious. And I have recipes that we're going to share and grocery lists to give you. And so make sure that you come, bring a pen and paper because you're going to want to know this information. And, people often ask me when I start to show them some of the recipes and I talk to them a little bit about, things they should eat, they say, well, why don't you do a recipe book? And, the truth is, and you guys will be the first ones to know this, I'm about halfway through with it. I'm about halfway finished with a book on this very important topic. But writing a book in between all the other things that I'm doing is not an easy thing to do. And so you should be, by the end of the summer, you should see that coming out. But it's going to be about half tips on eating properly, and then the back half is actually going to be recipes. But cooking is one of the things that I love to do because I'm determined to show people that healthy food does not have to be bland and boring. And you do not have to eat like a rabbit all the time to be healthy. We have a blast cooking around my house. The food is truly amazing, and it's super, super healthy. And I post a lot of my recipes and a lot of my meals after I get them plated on our Facebook page very often. And our Facebook page is the Bryant Wellness Institute, and you can catch and go like that page, and you can catch us there. Also, just while we're on the subject, I do a Facebook live show Thursdays at noon. I'm sitting right at my desk. We discuss a lot of these subjects. And so like our Facebook page, and you can catch my noon show as well. And the neat thing about the show at noon is you can join in. You can put questions on there, and we can have discussions right during the show. So you have the opportunity to join in. But we have to begin to look at the right stuff. And we're trying to solve diabetes looking at the wrong numbers. Our in-house blood panel is about 15 different pages. We look at leptin, we look at insulin, we look at fructosamine, we look at A1C, and then we check all the building blocks of all the hormones and the inflammatory factors. You have to get a clear picture of what is going on whenever you start to look at trying to figure out why someone has diabetes. And so stay tuned for more. You're listening to Get Well Acadiana. Don't forget to call and register next Thursday for our 4 Secrets of Diabetes workshop. The phone number is 837-7174. Call and leave your name and number on the machine. And Monday, when we get back in the office, we will call you and tell you a little bit more about it. It's going to be next Thursday night at the Hilton Garden Inn at 7. Leave your number on the machine at 837-7174. Now, when we get back from break, I'm going to tell you something that you may have never heard of. It's going to blow your mind with diabetes called external causes. The truth is, you may have something in your food and in the plastics right now that's causing you to have diabetes that you may have never even looked at before. So stay tuned. This is going to blow your mind when we get back.
Answering your questions every Saturday morning. Get Well Acadiana with Dr. Kevin.
Welcome back to Get Well Acadiana. I'm Dr. Kevin, Senior Vice President of Bryant Wellness Institute. We've been discussing diabetes today, and I think what hopefully you'll have learned so far is that we're looking at all the wrong data whenever it comes to solving diabetes. We're looking at blood sugar and A1C. And the truth is, diabetes is a disease of insulin. Why have the cells stopped being able to process their insulin? Why have the cells become insulin resistant? Remember, insulin is that key holder that opens your cell wall and puts insulin inside the cell to give you energy. And if that stops happening, the cells become resistant. And then you start to get the blindness. You start to get the leg amputations. You start to get the kidney disease. And so these things are very, very important. And the very last topic that I wanted to leave you with today, the one last thing that could be causing your diabetes, and remember, in functional medicine, we look for causes. We attempt to get as far upstream in the body as possible to treat the underlying causes. So there's one thing that we always like to check for when we evaluate a diabetic sufferer, and it's something that we call external causes. And what do I mean by that? External causes are things that could be happening in your body that is from something outside your body that you've been exposed to that is causing you to have some sort of a disease. And in this case, we're talking about diabetes. These are almost never looked at in traditional medicine. External causes, mainly for this discussion, are environmental chemicals that can contribute to your diabetes. Now, I'm going to list you 4 environmental chemicals that you're all exposed to on a daily basis in higher levels than it ever before in the history of mankind. In fact, the average American now eats and takes into their body 14 pounds of environmental chemicals, pollutants, and poisons every single year. Can you imagine that? 14 pounds. So, Brandon, just to give you a visual on what that means, you know, at the grocery store, the big box of Tide, you know, it's like 3 foot tall and 2 feet wide.
Yeah.
You know, it has the handle on top, the old box of washing powder, like, you know, our parents used to grab back in the day. That's 12 pounds.
Right.
So imagine if you got 3 kids and I brought you 3 of those boxes to your house with 3 spoons. And I said, I want you to spoon feed this box of soap to each one of your children every single year. Now, this is only 12 pounds, and so it's actually worse than this.
Yeah.
And next year, I'm going to bring you another one, and next year, another one, and next year, another one. You would never do that
Of
to
course.
your kids.
Yeah.
You would never do that, but it's already happening.
Yeah.
The average child and the average American takes in 14 pounds of toxic chemicals in their food and in their water and in their air every single year, year after year after year. So when you guys hear me talk a lot about cleansing and detoxifying the body, now you're going to understand why. The problem with cleansing is 99% of them aren't very effective. You got to really know what you're doing. But I wanted to talk to you about 4 top chemicals because the truth is there's thousands, but here are the top 4. The first one on the list is phthalates. Phthalates are a chemical that gives plastic flexibility. They're also in plastic soaps, shampoos, makeup, blood storage bags, believe it or not, and medical tubing. Now, phthalates are proven to cause thyroid disorders, hormone disruption, obesity, insulin resistance, and diabetes. Now, I want you guys to just watch one day everything that you eat or drink that comes out of plastic. I mean, milk used to come in a glass. Now everything comes in plastics. The second chemical that I wanted to talk about is BPA. This is another chemical that's in plastics. We also find BPA really heavily in the lining of canned foods. You know, they put BPA in the lining of cans to keep the tin taste out of your food. And so it lines canned foods. BPA is proven to cause thyroid problems, hormone disruptions, breast and prostate cancer, early onset of puberty in girls. This chemical has an estrogen-like quality, and there's so much of it in our environment that it has changed the average age of puberty in girls from 40 years ago. Now the average age of puberty in America in girls is 9. And that's how much BPA is in our environment. And BPA has also been associated with diabetes, obesity, ADD, bipolar disorders, anxiety, depression, and many other really, really bad things. And it's everywhere. And so just look at how much plastics we eat out of, and you can see how much BPA our kids and as Americans we're taking in our body, you know, every single year. And I mean, even just every single day. There's so much of it that it has changed the rate at which our girls are going into puberty. That's pretty remarkable. Now, the third chemical is polybrominated diphenyl ether. So polybrominated diphenyl ether is a flame retardant. They have to put this in mattresses, furniture, carpeting. You know, back in the 80s, the government stipulated that all mattresses and carpeting and couches and those kind of things had to have flame retardant on it. And, you know, some of these guys, even still, Brandon, that work in these plants, they have to wear flame retardant clothing. Mm-hmm. And this chemical has been shown to cause thyroid problems, hormone disruption, diabetes, learning problems, and ADD. And the last one is perfluorinated chemicals. Now, these are your stain resistors. These are very slick family of chemicals that coats and prevents sticking. So Teflon is an example of a perfluorinated chemical. So that chipped Teflon pan that you're still using in your kitchen, throw that away. Get one of these organic, non-toxic pans. Also, you find perfluorinated chemicals in fast food wrappers. So the reason your taco grease doesn't get through the wrapper and into the bag is because the wrapper is lined with perfluorinated chemicals. You know, when you unwrap something like that, the inside of the liner is kind of shiny and slick. That's a perfluorinated chemical doing that. And so These are perfluorinated chemicals, and they're proven to cause obesity, diabetes, heart problems, enlarged livers, thyroid dysfunctions, and cancers. Oh, you know what? Microwave popcorn is another place where you get loaded with perfluorinated chemicals. And so imagine eating 14 pounds of these chemicals every single year. So I want you guys to think about just 10 people you know that has health problems. We don't know people that has diphtheria and tuberculosis. We know people that have thyroid problems, hormone problems, ADD, depression, anxiety, diabetes, depression, cancers. This is where all this stuff is coming from these chemicals that I just talked about. So can you imagine eating 14 pounds of this junk every year? And so 40 years ago, no one ever heard of the rate of hormonal problems and female problems and ADD and depression and anxieties. This is where all this stuff is coming from. So the challenge in the next 2 decades or 3 decades in healthcare is how do we deal with the toxic overload from all these chemicals that's put in our food and in household items. Many of these things are banned in other countries, but the chemical manufacturers are here in the United States and they have a ton of political pull. And the truth is, getting these things banned in America is very, very tough. And I'm not one of those, environmental crazies, In fact, I'm on the other end of the political spectrum in almost every way possible. But the one environmental fact that no one is talking about is how these chemicals that are produced and are put in our food and put in our environment are affecting our health. Someone needs to be talking about this. And so just imagine if your diabetes is caused by you having too much of one of these chemicals in your body. And when we rid these chemicals out of your body, all of a sudden now your diabetes can be made better. So remember, with functional medicine, the goal is how do we figure out why the cells are doing what they're doing and get them to do what they need to do again. People are always looking for that one thing to get them better, but in functional medicine, sometimes we do 4 or 5 different things, and each one of them helps 20%. So if I do 5 things and each one of them helps 20%, all of a sudden we're all the way there. So it might not be a silver bullet. It might not be we found one problem and one solution. It might be that we put a comprehensive strategy together for you to where we do 5 different things, and each one of those things helps you 20%. And guess what? All of a sudden, we've resolved your health problems. And so I'm super excited to bring the workshop to you guys. It's going to be next Thursday night at the Hilton Garden Inn, called 4 Secrets to Beating Diabetes. I want you to find somebody that has diabetes and invite them to come with you. The phone number to register for that is 837-7174. We do have limited seating, so call. It's 837-7174. And if you leave your name and number, of course, we're not at the office on Saturdays. I'm not even at the office on Fridays. But if you'll call 837-7174 and leave your name and number on the machine, Monday when my girls get to the office, they will call you back and give you a little bit more information about it, talk to you about the workshop, and register for you to come. Invite somebody to come with you because you could save their life. And don't forget to email me your questions at drkevin@bryantwellnessinstitute.com. And join me on my Facebook show. You can like us at the Bryant Wellness Institutes, and you can join me live on my Facebook show Thursdays at noon. Thank you for listening today to Get Well Acadiana with Dr. Kevin. My purpose is to help as many people as possible using totally natural solutions, and I hope that I've done that today. Don't forget to call and register. Thank you very much for listening today.
More information from Dr. Kevin at BryantWellnessInstitutes.com.